There has been a lot of talk about the University of Utah being a potential candidate for the Big 12 if it decides to expand. But what do BYU fans think about this? Welcome to the Jersey Score. I'm Trevor, and today I'm going full homer as we examine the BYU fans' perspective of Utah potentially joining the Big 12. Now, I have to admit, my gut reaction is just to say stick it to Utah and have them enjoy the Pac-12 after they've loved to rub it in BYU's face that they got in there and say, you know what, forget you, have fun with this mess, and wait and watch the Pac-12 get picked apart until they're basically either a souped-up version of the Mountain West or have no other options but to go back to the Mountain West. I mean, who wouldn't want to see their opposing rival and end up in a situation like that? It would be hilarious. However, because I want to be fair, and also because my father is a Utah fan, I know, I want to give this a fair shake, and let's look at it. So there are a few factors that I would take into account when examining any school's potential candidacy for joining the Big 12, at least from BYU's perspective. So I would say, first of all, regional. Are they in that mountain or Pacific region? I think that's important because right now BYU is the only one in the West. They added a couple schools back east for West Virginia, so they're not completely on an island. Two would be rivalries. So in a day and age when realignment has destroyed so many rivalries, I think it would be great to preserve those or reunite teams, especially in this case, either existing or former rivals of BYU. Then I would look at their football program, their men's basketball program, and then also TV market. So in terms of region, obviously any school from the Pac-12 that the Big 12 considers adding would be a great fit regionally for BYU. Also, many of those schools have existing rivalries with BYU, and second to none is BYU-Utah. I mean, that's one of the great rivalries in all of college football. So adding the Holy War to the Big 12 would be a huge boost for the conference and great to have the Holy War reunited where it's every year. You could schedule it at the end of the year and it's in conference where there's everything at stake for the two teams. I would love to have that back. So obviously, as a BYU fan, you want to see the Holy War and you want to see that played in conference. That would be huge. Having said that, there are other schools in the Pac-12 and in the region that have history with BYU and existing rivalries. So I don't think that alone should qualify Utah to get in, but obviously I would love to have the Holy War back. Then we look at football, and there's no question that Utah is a very good football program. Whittingham is an excellent coach, and Utah is at an all-time high as they're coming off of their Rose Bowl appearance, and now they are at they have a top 10 preseason poll ranking. Now, Whittingham has already been rumored to potentially be retiring soon, or his name has been linked to other top openings like the USC position when that was open. So I don't know how much longer he'll be there. Now, is Utah good enough to continue their success and hire a good coach after Whittingham leaves? Yeah, absolutely. But I don't think it's a guaranteed. So I don't think we base it off of that alone. But they certainly bring high-level play and would help elevate the Big 12 brand in that regard. Now, you'll probably argue that men's basketball doesn't matter nearly as much as football, and I would agree certainly from a revenue perspective. But I think the Big 12, which has positioned itself as a premier basketball conference, really has to take that into account and how a team is going to affect its brand. So you want to bring in teams that are additive, that are at least middle of the pack, and Utah really falls short there. Lastly, let's look at TV markets. Now, we know that this is one of the biggest drivers of conference realignment. You look at Big Ten adding Rutgers and Maryland, even though they've been terrible football programs. You look at the SEC adding Mizzou, and really on and on. And so out of all of the Pac-12 schools that have been linked to the Big 12 in this round of expansion, Salt Lake is one of the smaller markets, and the Big 12 already has a presence there with BYU. And I don't bring this up because I feel threatened by sharing a market with Utah in conference. That's not it at all. It's just that the whole point of expansion is expanding and getting into new markets, getting in front of more eyeballs, really driving more revenue. And with Utah, yes, they're a very solid football program, but are they really that big of a national brand? Not really. They're more regional. And again, we already have a footprint there in that market with BYU. And so I look at, for example, Colorado, who has also been linked to joining the Big 12. Now, they've been terrible at football, they've been terrible at basketball. They're decent academically, but they're not Stanford. So really, the addition that they bring and why they've been linked to the Big 12 is because they do expand into a very good market, into the Denver market, and they bring those new eyeballs, even though they're not that great of a program. So Utah could come in and talk about all the success that they've had in football, but if they're not able to bring enough new eyeballs, then does it really make sense for expansion? So I would argue that San Diego State, not even coming from a Power 5 conference, who's good at football, good at basketball, and brings a new market, a new very good market to the conference, would bring more value. Now, again, I'm not saying that they would, but that's what makes sense to me. Obviously, at the end of the day, I would wait and see what the TV executives say, and whoever they say adds the most value, I would take their word. And if they say Utah, great. But if it's not Utah, and the Big 12 is only adding maybe 2 teams, I don't see how they're a top candidate. I would think that Arizona and San Diego State would bring more value from that perspective, getting into 2 new, bigger markets, and both very solid basketball programs. Now, if the Big 12 decides to add 4 or even 6 new schools, then I would say it's very likely that Utah is a very good candidate for getting in. But if it's just 2, I'm not convinced. So for you BYU fans out there, please let me know, did I come close to what you think about Utah joining the Big 12, or did I get it all wrong? And if you're not a BYU fan, let me know. Am I just too biased to see the obvious value that Utah brings to the table? Please let me know in the comments below, and we'll see you next time.